Hey bookworms! Ahead of today's episode, we're going to be playing a short trailer for Season 2 of the Attic Monologues, an urban fantasy horror audio drama written by Morgan and directed by today's guest, Elle. The Attic Monologues is a show about fate, friends to lovers, meta-narratives, and the importance of feathered friends. Season 2 is airing right now, and you can listen wherever you get your podcasts. If you enjoy the kind of stories we like to talk about on this show, namely those with great queer representation, thematic intricacy, and vivid, complicated characters, we think you'll absolutely adore it. We hope you enjoy the trailer, and the Hidden Bookcase will be right back.
A boy is dragged into the dark. He does not understand the full extent of why this is. He does not understand yet that he is chosen. But he will. But this is not that story. Stories are like their protagonists. They come and they go, and they are interchangeable. Mostly. You have been waiting in the dark. It is a metaphorical dark, unlike the one that came before you. And yet you have been walking in your dark for so long that when the light comes, you are sure it will break you. It sears your eyes and burns your skin, and your very bones feel bleached and torn out under a microscope, and yet it is only the first of many suns, and each will burn brighter than the last. You think, in the end, you might have preferred the darkness, after all.
Welcome to the Hidden Bookcase. Come through and get cozy. Pick a book, your favourite book, that's the one that opens this room. Inside you'll find a warm fire, a loving cat, and a wide skylight to the stars.
And a dangerously high to-be-read pile.
I'm Morgan, I use they/them pronouns, and I am a walking chronic pain cure.
I'm Soren, I use he/him pronouns, and I am a zombified dog.
I'm Elle, I use she/her pronouns, and I am dying to spite your enemies.
Soren and I have been friends for over a decade, and the two of us are always swapping books.
Each fortnight, the two of us, sometimes with help from a friend, take it in turns to recommend one another a favourite read. The first-time reader tells us what they know about the book, makes some predictions about what they don't, and then we discuss our thoughts with all of you bookworms. This month is Dark Academia month.
So today, let's get to talking about
Vicious by V.E. Schwab. So we're joined by Elle today. Hello, Elle.
Hello.
For those of our audience who don't know Elle, would you like to introduce yourself?
I can do that. I met Morgan through university, and we work on the Attic Monologues together, which is also how I met Soren. Yeah. I have been bothering them both to read Vicious for a while. Well, I think Morgan's already read it, but...
You already got through to Morgan.
I'd read it before we met.
Oh, had you?
I think. It was one of those books that I read when I was getting back into reading for the first time, and it was one of those books I bought when I was 16 when I was going on charity shop rampages.
I guess that's how you found out about it. Elle, how did you come across Vicious?
So, it is 2015, and BookTube is still a thing. Yeah, I saw it being wrecked a lot, and then I was like, no, I won't read it. And then I waited 3 years, and then I read it, and I was like, oh damn, this is actually good.
Elle, Morgan, you're the ones that have read it before, so you have to take us away. What's Vicious about?
Vicious is about two university students who end up kind of discovering how to create superpowers, and then one of them goes to prison for murder for 10 years or so, comes back and is like, I'm going to cause problems. And there's a lot of stuff about power and villainy and all of that good stuff.
Be homoerotic, do crime.
That's the plot. I think that's a pretty good summary, honestly. Shall we see what I thought it was about? I can't remember, so I guess we'll... I feel like I know nothing at all about Vicious. It's V. Schwab. I've read Addie LaRue, and I've read the first In the Shades of Magic series, but I don't really feel like that tells me what to expect, because those are totally quite different, and I'm expecting this one to be too. I think this is about superheroes, or supervillains. I think the protagonist might be a villain. I'm not sure if he's an anti-hero or like a genuine villain or a villain protagonist or what. There's bones on the cover, maybe he's a necromancer. I don't think he's a necromancer. I believe this is a Killian, or if it's not a Killian, people really like to ship two of the boys together. And it's Dark Academia somehow, not sure how it qualifies because, again, I think it's about superheroes and not like school, but I really just have no idea what to expect from this. Predictions. The first one's called Vicious, the second one's called Vengeful, so maybe the first one is about the villain and the second one is about the previous protagonist or superhero who is now getting revenge on that villain. That's not a good prediction for this book, because it's a prediction about the second book. He doesn't have necromancy powers. I think he's going to have, like, a really sciencey power. That's my prediction. Like, it's going to be something really specific. Like, for example, Helen in the AM archives, whose power is to manipulate frequencies, but then it turns out that that's not really specific and you can't just mess up with the radio. It's actually hugely wide-ranging, because you can mess up the frequencies of electricity in someone's brain, or the frequency of sound coming out of their mouth. That's my prediction. He's going to have a power like that seems really simple on the surface, but is actually exceedingly complicated. Okay. I was struggling with that one. I didn't know anything about this book. But I feel like that was kind of right at the end there. The pain thing.
Yeah.
It has multiple layers. Of course, we have to have a Bright Sessions reference in there because it's us.
And I was thinking about superpowers, so...
It is Dark Academia.
It was not a necromancer. They're not actually gay.
They're not gay.
Apparently, Victor is supposed to be ace.
Slay. They're not gay, but V.E. Schwab is queer, so she knows what she's doing.
In the way that people talk about it, I did think that it was canon. I went in with the expectation that maybe it wasn't canon and it was just the way that people talk about it. So I wasn't, like, surprised. Shall we talk about the cover?
Yes. Despite the fact it's minimalist, it's also, like, very relevant. If you look close enough, you can see the words that are being blacked out underneath, which is really cool.
This was my downfall because I had an ebook library copy, so I couldn't look at the cover very closely, and I didn't realise that it was blackout until I finished the book. And I only saw bones, and I thought that they were all bones, and there's knives, syringes, there's a lot of stuff in there.
And Victor is just the most pretentious, Byron-esque, emo middle school kid vibe.
He was a Tumblr emo poet before his time.
I feel like we should have got more of his poetry. That would have been fun.
Please, give me, like, an actual copy of his parents' books, blacked out. I would pay good money for that. I really love the colour scheme that V.E. Schwab has on all her books. The fact that it's black, white, and red delights me. Her new book series that is coming out in September throws that out the window, and I don't know how to put it on my bookshelf, because she's also re-releasing some of her books in this new colour scheme, and it upsets me quite a lot, because I have all of her books in a particular colour scheme.
You simply have to buy all of their books in the new colour scheme.
Yeah, but the new colour scheme's weird.
Oh, let's talk about the book.
Let's talk about the book. The writing style.
I loved it. I think it is one of the most character-driven narrative voices. Because I think with something like this, it would be very easy to make Victor and Victor reacts to everything. But from the beginning, you can hear the arrogance through his voice and the way that he thinks about other people. And I think the narrative is very good about balancing between, hey, this is how Victor thinks. He's not being objective in any way, shape, or form, but this is how it makes sense in his head.
Yeah.
It is such a well-balanced narrative of, like, this guy is awful.
But not as awful as the other guy.
On balance, you're going to be Team Victor. Yeah.
Yeah. It is very sort of, like, fan fiction. I definitely recognise a lot of the tropes and a lot of the sort of tone of the writing style, especially when it comes to, like, morally grey characters. It's also just really easy to read and really well plotted out. And I think this is her most plot-driven novel, because most of the books that they write are very much just there for the atmosphere and the vibes. And if that isn't your thing, you will get lost very quickly. The number of people I've seen who read Gallant and were like, nothing happened for 300 pages. And it's like, yeah, but nothing happened for 300 pages. You just emotioned for 300 pages. Is that not worth a lot? Whereas this is very much like, it feels like you're reading a graphic novel, or it feels like you're watching a superhero movie, and everything's sort of jigsawing together, and there's so many characters and actions happening.
I think they also balance the 3 timelines, or like 2.5, really well. There was never a bit where I was like, oh, we're spending too long here, I don't want to be here. They kind of knew how to splice in, here's the relevant 10 years ago thing, which we're now going to see the consequences of. Everything went fine. By the way, here's how I broke out of prison.
There were some really fun segues with dramatic irony. I did appreciate that a lot. It was very cinematic. I was thinking this would work so well as an adaptation. I know there's comics. Are the comics an adaptation, or are the comics like spin-offs?
The comics are spin-offs about random other characters in this universe. But, like, why would you adapt First Kill as V.E. Schwab's first adaptation when you could adapt Vicious, one of their most popular books?
Yeah, and the problem with First Kill was that there really wasn't much to work with, I
It's a
guess.
teeny tiny short story.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd trust anybody with an adaptation because I feel it is so easy for them to turn Victor into, oh, he's the real hero. Eli's terrible. You have to be on his side and leave out this dude may be a genuine sociopath. Even before the dying, he was kind of f***ed up, you know?
Yeah.
I do feel like it's a very intriguing world setup. I love the power origin thing of having to be dead and then come back.
Yeah, I think, like, specifically that it's not linked to how you die, it's the way that you are processing dying.
That's so spicy, I love that.
Mm.
And also, one of the themes that I really love is that every character we meet that has powers was already kind of f***ed up before the near-death experience. Because when Eli's going off on his whole, well, I'm different since this happened, we're all different, therefore we must die, I'm like, consider that this just might be a trauma response, my guy. You've all had to basically die for a bit and then come back, and also all of you had issues prior to the whole dying thing.
Indeed.
I absolutely love Eli's brain logic of like, yeah, I also came back from the dead, but I'm not like other girls. I came back specially because God asked me to go murder everybody else who came back.
Eli's like, guys, I came back with Catholic guilt. Therefore...
Also, he uses the thing of like, well, my power isn't inherently dangerous. You're inherently dangerous, though. So.
It's why I think one of the things I love about the complexity of this novel is where Sydney is like, well, of course I trust Victor, because he is absolutely insane, but he doesn't hide that. Whereas Eli puts on this chart, it's when she's like, I hope he hurts him. And Mitch is like, damn!
It's described as like smiling cheerfully or something as she says it, which is perfect.
And it's because she's like, oh, I know when he's lying and he doesn't treat me like I'm stupid. He's like, I'm not a good person. I never claimed to be, but I haven't shot you. And also, you're useful to me. Would you like a found family in this man that I broke out of prison with? He can be the emotional rock for both of us.
And also you can keep this dog.
The found family aspect of this book genuinely makes me so insane because they've known each other for like 3 days.
So short.
So ride or die for each other. In those 3 days, Victor tortures Sydney by accident, gets her in danger multiple times, forces her to resurrect people and make her watch whilst he shoots somebody in the head. And she's still like, you know, what I consider to be the most safe place on earth, by that man's side.
It's the quote where it's like, safe. Because she's like, I know that if somebody tries to hurt me, he'll make them hurt worse.
Yes.
I will be honest, I spent this entire book convinced Mitch was gonna die. Because I was like, he's gotta be the casualty. Like, he's the, one semi-morally grey but not an actual murderer in this book, vaguely emotionally competent. Of course he's gonna get murdered. And then they try and fake murder him 4 times. And every time, he's like, absolutely not.
And Victor's the one that actually dies.
Get shot 4 times in the chest. Babes, I was wearing a vest. I know that Mitch is like, I have the worst luck, but I think he also has been like designated survivor by the universe. The universe is like, you'll live, you just won't enjoy it.
I was theorising the whole time, what if Mitch is some kind of EO and doesn't know?
Yeah.
Because people nearly die when they're babies, and they might not know. Your parents might not tell you. I don't know what his power would be in that situation. The power to murder people by proxy.
Have you considered that he's Victor's specialist little guy?
That's his power. Oh, the chocolate milk. What a guy.
It's the little things. You know that Victor is like a terrible person, but then he also goes and gets extra milk for Mitch and makes sure that there's his favourite movies running in the background. He goes and does all these little things that show that he cares, and he's not doing them as an ulterior motive.
He tells himself he is. He's like, he keeps doing that thing where he's correcting himself, where he's like, I need them. I mean, I need their things that are useful to me about them. It's like, okay.
Okay. You keep telling yourself that.
It's an achievement to have them be a convincing found family. I guess Mitch and Victor have known each other for a while. Sydney, by virtue of being like a kid, you're like, yeah, okay, this child was just shot. Trauma bonding, and also, that's a baby. She's coming with us now.
Accidental baby acquisition.
I think as well, it's the fact that post-prison, Mitch and Victor did not have to stick together. They get in the car and Mitch is like, where to? Victor could have walked away. Victor could have been like, see ya. But then he's like, no, I absolutely need this man. Why? Computers. Yes.
Computers.
That is the sole reason I am keeping this man around.
We love an unreliable narrator when they're unreliable just because they're emotionally repressed.
I think, again, it's why the revenge plan works so much, because yes, it is the main driver of Victor's entire personality and pulse at this point. But he is doing other things. He's not just sitting... Like, he is sitting and constantly obsessing about Eli, but he's doing it whilst also doing other things.
Yes.
He's like, Yes, I will pace the floor of this townhouse after patching up a small child, but I will be thinking about being able to stab him. Get you a guy who can multitask.
Exactly.
So I feel like we need to talk about Sydney and Serena now.
We should.
Serena is so messed up, and I want to pick apart her brain.
She's also a very interesting kind of delusional to complement Eli, which is fantastic. What a power couple.
Yeah.
I mean, they kind of are. I love the fact that every day she says, "You won't kill me today," because she's like, I know you're a slippery bastard and you'll find a way through it, but that means I will say it in the most plainest terms possible.
Because they had put so much emphasis on midnight, I was confident that what would happen was that we would get just past midnight and she wouldn't have said it again. That didn't happen. But that was I've connected the dots. I haven't connected.
It makes sense. And it's really interesting the fact she could say, "You're not going to kill me ever." But she chooses every time to say today because she wants to be kept on her toes, and she does have a death wish and she wants to go out.
Yeah.
And she's just waiting for Eli to push through and to figure out that there's a loophole. And he doesn't. Because he could just wake up at midnight. At any point in the past year, he could have woken up at midnight and just killed her and moved on. Their dynamic is so interesting, of Victor being like, why the hell is he keeping her alive? Why? And it turns out that she's kind of masterminding him and he's masterminding her.
Everybody thinks that they are the person pulling the wool over the other person's eyes, but it's all of them, all the time.
Mutual manipulation.
I also love that this book is also kind of Sydney's coming of age, but in a really up way. In that, like, the adults don't have all the answers. My sister, who I've kind of relied on to protect me and look after me, she can't do that anymore. And at first it's like, oh yeah, she's gone to uni, and then it's, oh no, she's now actively wishing for my death. There are no heroes, there's nobody who's gonna save me. Of course I'm gonna go with Victor, because he's honest about it. He's like, nah, babes, it's not gonna get better.
On the subject of characters, who are people's favourites?
I mean, it's gotta be Victor.
Yeah?
I want to study him under a microscope. He is both incredibly self-serving, but then also has more of a capacity to make relationships than he seems to want to realise.
Yeah.
We love a dedicated man. If he has a plan, he's going to follow through with it.
I think my favourite character has to be Victor. You know me. I love a good morally grey character who accepts that they're morally grey and is like, I'm just going to move through the world like this. I grew up on AO3 searching that morally grey tag. It itches my soul in a very specific way. Morally grey, but also with a found family, is even better because it grows from like, I'm very self-serving to don't touch them. And then to do it platonically, because I know we've got a massive rage of enemies to lovers and dark romance at the moment where people are like, don't touch her, I'm going to kill everybody. And then they have like very, very explicit sex. And I'm like, that's great for you. I want platonic, I'll burn the world for them.
Hell yeah.
That's what I need in my life.
I think we need more of that.
This is perfect for that. Who's your favourite character?
I think I have to go with Serena, actually, just because her chapters, I was enjoying them so much. Love manipulative powers, love the fact that she was like, damn, nobody gives me any pushback or challenge anymore, everything's really boring. What do? I know. I'll get involved with this guy that's trying to kill me because it's the most interesting thing that's happened to me in ages.
We've definitely talked about it on a different episode, about the trope of the character who convince people to do everything, and how we see it in Damien in the Bright Sessions and Alison in the Umbrella Academy. It's interesting to see it done in a way that is both sympathetic and still terrible.
I have to admit, though, I can't believe they left Sydney alone without earplugs. I know that they weren't expecting Serena to literally be in the same hotel because that's a wild coincidence, but as soon as she started calling through the door, I was like, just cover your ears.
Yeah.
Or just start screaming so that you cannot hear.
Every single time they missed each other in the hotel lobby, I was getting so... I love that trope, but...
I do think we have to talk about Angie.
Yeah, please, actually.
I understand the point of her was for both Eli and Victor, she's not a person, she's a thing.
Yes.
For Victor, it's this, I have to be the centre of attention in all of my relationships. No, I never made a move on you or made it explicit that I was romantically interested in you, but now that you're dating somebody else, I'm like, but I want to be important.
Yeah.
And for Eli, she is part of his picture-perfect golden boy. Here is this intelligent woman that I'm dating. I would have liked to have at least one line in text about the fact that she had other friends and family that missed her.
Yeah.
Because after she dies, Victor hardly ever mentions her again. I think Eli uses her as a manipulative tool, like, he murdered my girlfriend, obviously I'm in pieces because of that. But then she's never really mentioned again. Like, when the novel started, I thought the body they were digging up was Angie's.
So did I.
So did I.
It was when he was like, he needs to get the message, and I'm like, yeah, via his dead girlfriend.
I did think that Schwab was deliberately lampshading that sort of trope of a woman caught between two men, and how fandoms will immediately hate on a female character because she gets in the way of their two homoerotic men. And I feel like throwing her away like that was making it so bare bones clear that women characters are often not treated as real people. You know that she's the cleverest person there, basically, because she's inventing a new colour blue in her first year of uni, and yet...
I think that's fair. I kind of still felt like this woman has been fringed a little bit. When you're trying to satirize something, sometimes you end up just playing into it.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe if something had been seeded later in the narrative, like if she had become important in some way.
Yeah. I kept waiting for something to come up about that.
Yeah.
For there to be some sort of reference, or for Sydney to find out about her and it'd be like, he just left her to die. Even if Victor and Eli saw her as an object, the narrative could have done more.
Completely.
To be like, I am making a point with this.
To me, at least, it felt like she was also an object in the narrative, in that she was the thing that sparked the fight. It's kind of sexy lamp principle. Oh, Victor, you broke my sexy lamp. Technically, she brought him to the facility and stuff, but it was all very sort of peripheral.
Yeah. I would have loved to see more of Victor and Angie's relationship. The whole, like, save me text thing was really cute.
I think I could have got more with her and Eli, because at least with Victor there was that, like, oh, we're both kind of the outcasts, they have the save me thing, whereas her and Eli seem to be, we're dating. Sorted.
Boom.
Yeah, we kind of never got Angie's feelings about that relationship in any way, which I think it could have been interesting to have like some conversation with Victor, where Victor's like, oh, clearly they're not right for each other because of this.
Yeah.
Or because of Angie's point of view, rather than just because Eli is so deep and twisted.
Angie doesn't understand him.
Yeah, which also very much reads like jealousy. Love that. She just doesn't get him the way I do.
I do kind of love, though, that Victor is like, I want to make you worse. Why are you trying to be better? Join me in the swamp.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Eli's like, I have no concept of having this dark thing inside me. I what are you talking about?
Don't know what you're talking about. I repress everything.
And then, is it less than a day after Angie dies, he just, like, throws his professor down the stairs?
I think it's, like, the same day, because they get there, and they question him, and he's like, I have to go see the body. And then he doesn't go see the body.
There's that one which you can just about be like, oh my god, he ended up down the stairs in the tussle. And then he's like, it was totally an accident that I found out this guy's work schedule, stalked him, and ran him over with a car.
Yeah.
Totally an accident.
God didn't intervene, so it was supposed to happen.
God did not hit the brakes. Jesus did not take the wheel. You cannot expect more of me.
Let's talk about the discussion on pain and chronic pain.
Let's.
This is the first time I ever saw it in a book. The idea of somebody who can cause pain but also turn it off. Every chronically ill person I know is like, sign me the up, bestie. I'll commit crimes for that, sure. And also the fact that Victor has chronic pain from his near-death experience. When he first wakes up, he's incapacitated by his pain until he turns it off. And it's not really ever said that he ever turns it back on properly, which implies that his entire body is just in this complete agony at all times, and he's just choosing not to feel it.
And I also like the discussion with Sydney where he's like, I'm going to give the pain back because I need you to be aware of how hurt you are. And at the end where he's like, oh no, I do have to turn my pain on because I can't let him fully beat me to death.
At least not yet.
The metaphor at the end of them all getting their pain back and realising that Victor must be dead because of it.
That was such a good moment.
I think one of the reasons that I loved it in this book is it would have been very easy to make that into a quote-unquote good superpower of like, he can heal, and it's like, he can't fix it. He can just make it not hurt.
Which is potentially dangerous. For example, if you've been shot, you need to just feel a little bit of that so you're not banging your arm into everything because you've been shot.
Victor says how taking away pain also takes away things like fear and rationality and impulse control. And he has to literally reinvent his own system and follow it logically rather than emotionally because nothing's stopping him from doing anything. And it's so interesting how he uses it to dissuade people from looking at him by just making them a bit uncomfortable.
I think it's also a really fun foil to Eli, because Eli does have the healing thing.
If they could work together, they would be unstoppable. They could do literally anything. If Victor could take away Eli's pain.
Soren, didn't you want to talk about the Victor's ace? I think it was confirmed by the author.
In retrospect, I'm now remembering people talking about this back in my teens. I forgot, but now that we're talking about it, I'm having vague recollections of being on Tumblr and people being like, does anyone have any fiction with ace protagonists? And people being like, vicious. I do feel that there is a little bit of an element of making it this specific character archetype who is a villain. Particularly, I feel like Victor is also autistic coded. I was talking to my housemate about this earlier who is autistic. I was saying, the bit towards the beginning where he talks about mirroring people's facial expressions. and she was like, yes, exactly that.
Which makes me question whether it's falling into the trap of desexualizing autistic people.
I don't think it's implicitly bad, but it is that thing of like when that's the only representation you have. And obviously in 2013, there wasn't a hell of a lot of it.
Possibly, but I think for me it opens up an interesting discussion about breaking the link between sex and violence. He doesn't want to hurt Eli because he wants to sleep with her.
Yes.
Maybe it's to make sure that nobody is reading it as a specific type of violence.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point.
It just very much reminded me of the whole, I think TV tropes calls it no love for the wicked trope. And I feel like it's a trope that isn't usually consciously applied to asexual characters, to be fair. Just that lack of sexual attraction is portrayed as inherently villainous or other.
Where they like don't have empathy, which isn't true of Victor at all. Like he clearly does have empathy. And obviously empathy and sympathy are different. I won't get into that.
I don't feel like I've seen that trope that much. Maybe I've just missed it.
I feel like it's more often non-human characters.
As an autistic ace person, Victor is my blowback. I relate to him. I too feel rage sometimes.
And also it just means that I was like, yeah, we're not going to have any weird, and now he sleeps with somebody for information. Nah, he's got other things to do. He's got to do murder and chocolate milk.
I think the thing that surprised me about it, I was like looking at some of the reviews and those people were like, yeah, I had canon him as ace. And I was like, based on what in this text? Do you know what I mean? He can be ace, that's fine. What part of him? Okay, I guess he never really thinks about sex. I guess maybe you could argue that he might be sex repulsed in the way that he really hates seeing Eli and Angie do video in front of him. But
for me, it's the bit where every time he talks about liking Angie, there's not really a lot about her body or sounding like he wants to sleep with her. It's more about, I want to be the centre of attention. She is brilliant and I am brilliant. I want us to be brilliant together. But there's never any like, I can't believe Eli's sleeping with her. It's, why are they kissing? In the cafeteria.
In the cafeteria, right in front of my salad.
Eli, you're supposed to be Catholic.
It's the allonormativity of him being like, yes, I am now an adult. I must get a girlfriend. This is the closest woman to me. Cool, that's my crush.
Yeah.
And then just never unpacking that in his brain. I feel like he has the same consideration for both Angie and for Eli. He just looks at them and sees intelligent people and is like, I must be near them. And it's more of a like personality thing.
Yeah.
But then Eli has that little edge where he's like, oh my god, we're the same person.
It's like, wow, there's something wrong with you.
Birds of a feather. As the person who is new to this book, Soren,
I know.
tell us about your final thoughts.
My final thoughts are that I had fun. I feel like V. Schwab has improved as a writer, and I know this was their first adult book, but I also think that this was a very good piece of literature. I have niggles about it. I feel like the denouement didn't quite do it for me in the way that I wanted it to, just because it had been so high intensity for so long. For me, it kind of lost momentum, but I appreciate that that's a personal problem. I wanted Victor to be more of an evil genius. I think I wanted his plan to be more convoluted. Moments like the moment where Mitch puts the gun to his forehead and then it's empty were really fun, and I just wanted more of that, basically. It was just missing a tiny something, so I think it's a 4-star from me. But I had a very, very good time.
I feel like if there had been too many of those instances, it would have felt more flat, because at the end of the day, Victor is basically still a college student who's just trying to absolutely wail on his nemesis. I kind of like him being a bit useless.
That's fair, that's fair. Elle, would you like to go next?
I loved it. I think it had been hyped up so much and I was like, oh, it's not going to live up to the hype. And then it did. I think the character voice throughout was so strong and there were enough moments for you to see that this is Victor seeing it from his perspective. That is not necessarily the objective way that you need to view this. I personally liked the ending because I like that it was this massive build-up and then it just ends with two friends beating the hell out of each other in a warehouse.
Yeah.
Because the point is that from that point they are not 30-year-old grown-up men. They're like, I am 19 and full of rage.
Yeah.
So I loved it. I gave it 5 stars, which is a very rare rating from me.
Well, a 5 stars is not too rare from me, as we have learned on this podcast.
That's not a bad thing.
This book is a 5-star from me. I believe it was the first V.E. Schwab book I ever read. They definitely have improved as a writer and found their niche over time. But there's something about this book that just feels like injecting crack directly into your veins, you know? Not that I know what that feels like, but it feels like reading the best fanfic. I don't know what it is, but it's just so fun. I was kicking my feet. I was making the fanfic smile. I could not read this in public because every time like Victor and Eli interacted, I was like, oh my god. Like I can read hardcore smut in public. I could not read this in public. I love V.E. Schwab. I will read everything they write, and I love this book, and I love these characters, and I want them back.
Do we have any recommendations for any Vicious fans?
Read everything else that V.E. Schwab's written, because they've written a lot.
They have.
Outside of V. Schwab, I have 2 recommendations. One that is more like Match for Match 5, and one that is more of a rogue take. Match for Match, I would say The Last Tale of the Flower Bride by Roshani Chokshi,
yeah.
because it has obsessive friendships, I don't know where you end and I begin, a lot of things about identity and things have happened in the past that are affecting the present, but also was the past real? Interesting stuff with like memory and perception and things like that. My rogue take is City of Nightmares by Rebecca Schaefer, in terms of an incredibly strong narrative voice that is really good at balancing the difference between this is the character and you can follow their thought process, and also this character is in no way being objective or necessarily correct.
I feel like City of Nightmares, you can also be like comic book-esque, adjacent,
Yes.
inspired,
Yeah.
completely screwed up city, getting caught in between. Definitely agree. It's giving DC comic book.
I feel like this is predictable for me, that I have to be like the Bright Sessions books, particularly a Neon Darkness. If you were a Serena fan, if you want another character who has to deal with the fact that people say yes to everything they say and how that can mess a person up, Damien's narrative in that is very fun. And also if you like villain protagonists, I guess, because he's not a good person. So
Morally grey characters with very unreliable narration.
Morally Grey characters with very unreliable narration and some gays. So, you know,
Some gays.
would recommend.
Can I just recommend Gideon the Ninth for the 17th time on this show?
Yes.
Because I'm gonna. You know what I'm gonna recommend is The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. Because it is about rivals / enemies who absolutely hate each other but also love to challenge each other and are obsessed with each other while everyone else is just like, what is going on here? The end of the second book, spoilers, has one of those scenes of, but I'm the hero, I'm this thing, and everyone being like, says who? You're completely delusional, bestie. I feel like that dynamic works really well, and it's also one of those like classic YA books that I feel like fits in neatly with V.E. Schwab's vibe and style.
I also wanted to mention Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. If you want a delusional narrator, I cannot think of a better delusional narrator. Very different book in that it's a thriller and there's no fantastical elements. But if you want an unreliable narrator, you want them digging themselves into a hole of self-deception, and you're sitting there like, how the hell are you justifying this to yourself? I can see how you're justifying it to yourself. You're on a wild one, though. Yellowface is absolutely perfect for that. We are at the end. Elle, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for getting us to read Vicious. I mean, I'm not going to do Vicious. Thank you for getting me to read Vicious, though, because I had a good time. Where can people find you if they're like, wow, I'm Elle's biggest fan now?
They can't. But I will recommend the stuff that I make. Listening to all of these and people like, here are my socials, and I'm like, absolutely not. But yeah, no, so listen to the Attic Monologues. I direct that and act in it sometimes. And season 2 will be... Will we have debuted the first couple episodes by the time this comes out?
Yeah, it will be out. I think about 2 episodes will be out.
Yeah, so listen to the Attic Monologues. Season 2's on its way. And you can also listen to Hit Replay, which is my series about time loops and best friends going insane.
Morgan and Elle both do things on Hit Replay. I don't do anything on Hit Replay. I'm objective. You should listen to Hit Replay. It's really, really good.
Next, we will be doing Legendborn by Tracy Dion. This is my pick. I'm forcing Soren to read it. I am very excited. I won't say anything else because I could be feral about this book quite easily. But until then, you're always welcome through the bookcase.
Don't forget to scratch the cat on your way out. Thank you for listening to The Hidden Bookcase, a production of Plain Up Rod. On this episode, you heard Ellen Clohessy, Morgan Greensmith, and Soren Briarwood discussing Vicious by V.E. Schwab. You can find out more about this book at victoriaschwab.com, and you can follow Schwab on Twitter at V.E. Schwab. A huge thank you to Elle for joining us for this episode. You were electric. You can follow her at AudioRKO on Twitter, or check out Urban Fantasy, The Attic Monologues, and Time Loop Mystery Hit Replay wherever you get your podcasts, or linked in the show notes. You can find The Hidden Bookcase on Twitter at Hidden Bookcase, and on Instagram, Facebook, Tumblr, and TikTok at Hidden Bookcase Podcast. Find out more about Plain Up Rod at plainuprod.com. Know what we should read next, and want to chat to us about what you thought of this episode's read? You can reach us at thehiddenbookcase@gmail.com, or send us a DM on social media. We'd love to hear from you. If you're enjoying The Hidden Bookcase, please consider leaving us a rating or review, or you can always tell a friend how to find us. Your whispers are the best way for bookworms to discover our show. On our next episode, which will be out on Monday, the 25th of September, we'll be discussing Legendborn by Tracy Dion. We hope to see you then, and in the meantime, you're always welcome through the bookcase.